What is up, YouTube? We just had a technical issue. Um, Problem there. Apologies for that. I've been talking to myself for the last 4 minutes, and someone just texted me saying, "Are you still going live?" So apologies for that. We will kick it off again from the scratch. Just want to confirm that this is in live. If you can hear me right now, just drop something in the chat. Okay, looks like we're getting some confirmations here. So technical snafu. Not sure what happened there, but it's a shame. I was on a roll. But we will start from the top again. Welcome to this live training. Today, we're going to be talking about converting with conversations, right? How do we basically take the organic conversations that are happening in your business, whether it's with an email conversation, a text exchange, whether you're DMing someone on Facebook or on Instagram, right? These days, we have a lot of locations where we have these digital conversations, essentially these chats, and for a lot of us, they can feel like a massive time suck, or for some people, they feel like a huge golden opportunity because they know that there's a lot of business to be found in there. And for a lot of people, I want to talk through how you can actually take those conversations and turn them into clients and students, right? Now, today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking through the workbook, which you probably grabbed a copy of earlier this week. If you haven't, go below this video. There's a button, there's a link below, and you can grab your copy of this. This is the same workbook, the same worksheets I use when training my private clients on how to do this. And we'll go through here the conversational flow, which is the 3-part framework that we use to basically start conversations, move people to see if they're a good fit, and then convert them, right? We'll be talking more about this later on. But we're going to start at the top here, which is talking through some of the frustrations that people have, right? When it comes to converting people in these conversations, right? To start, let's just quickly talk about what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to convert people with simple private chat conversations, right? But we're going to do it by building relationships, finding 5-star prospects, and then as much as possible, enroll more
What is
students
up, YouTube?
into
We just had a technical issue.
into your program. Just getting a background noise here. I'm just closing all these messages that I thought were already closed. So let's talk about the problem, right? What is the problem? What are some of the frustrations that people encounter when they are using conversational selling, right? To start, the big issue is obviously not enough clients or students, right? You could be in a ton of conversations. You might be getting a bunch of inbox replies from like the emails that are going out, or you might have people following you on Instagram constantly or on Messenger, joining your group. And all these conversations are there happening, but we're just not getting enough action. We're not getting enough return out of the energy that we're putting into these conversations. And frankly, what we're trying to do is get you more clients and more students for your education and coaching programs, whether that's a membership site, a private group coaching, or whether it's like some sort of just straight online course, right? Whatever it is. The problem we have is we're just not getting enough of those new customers. Okay. One big issue that a lot of people have is tons of conversations, but no buyers, right? This is very typical. I see this with a lot of people. They add some sort of question to the start of their email autoresponder, and then they start getting a bunch of replies, which seems awesome initially, but then they don't know how to convert those conversations. And so we just have all these conversations, and we somehow think, oh, if we just engage with these people, they're going to hand us money. And that's not how it works, as we're going to talk about here in a minute. But that's the first issue, is that there's lots of conversations, but no buyers. Alternatively, on the other side of the problem is sometimes it feels like we're talking to an empty room, right? You might be sending out your emails, you might be posting in a group, you might be doing whatever on your Instagram, but we're getting no interaction back, and there's absolutely a minimal amount of conversations for us to even try and engage with, right? That's another big issue. And it's a frustration because if you don't know how to start these conversations, well, it's very hard to close a conversation if you're not in the conversation. So we have to like start the conversation. We have to know how to like continue the conversation, and then we need to know how to close that person if they are qualified, right? But one issue is if we're not even starting conversations, it feels like we're talking to nobody. Lastly, it can feel like a massive time suck, or not lastly, as I mentioned, I should say, it can feel like a massive time suck, right? If you have all these conversations and you're just constantly in them and you don't know how to manage them, you don't know how to qualify and know who you should and should not be spending time with, and if you feel like you have to respond to absolutely everybody, it can be time consuming. And if you're not getting any return, if we're not seeing any calls booked or new course enrollments or new coaching clients. Like it's a drag. It really is a drag. It feels like a massive giant black hole of doom where our time and effort just gets sucked in and nothing comes out the other end. And it can feel like a big opportunity that we can't land, right? Massive, big white Moby Dick that we know what people out there are able to do this and we hear them bragging about it, but we can't do it. And it feels like a massive opportunity going to waste, right? So, what is possible, right? What are we looking to accomplish here if we get this done right? Well, to start, you can very easily have a consistent flow of conversations coming into your business, right? A tap that you can turn on and off or turn up and down as you need it, right? Do you want the cold? Would you want to talk to the cold leads or do you want to talk to the hot leads, right? Obviously, we all want to talk to hot leads, but for hot water, it has to start cold and you need to warm it up, right? But what we want to be able for you is to have a tap in your business where you know there's going to be a consistent flow of conversations coming from multiple entry points in your business, right? New leads coming through the front door, people on your email list who have been engaging with your stuff. You want to be able to engage and converse with them at various levels so that you know what the next step is for them, right? It's also possible to get more students with less pressure, right? You don't have to be using massive, big value stacks and urgency deadlines and launches to convert people if you're talking to them one on one like a real person, right? Oftentimes, there's a lot of people out there that don't buy from the launch method of doing things, but are happy to purchase if you have a personal conversation with them. And if they feel like you've got what they need, they're ready to get started right now, right? Anytime people are purchasing through like one of these one-way email campaigns, you're kind of taking a risk, right? You're kind of thinking, well, maybe this stuff on the sales page will be able to help me solve what I need, right? And oftentimes what ends up happening during a launch campaign is you send out all the emails and then you have all these conversations that come back, and the conversations that come back are really what sell the thing. We can convince ourselves it was the sales page, but it's the conversations that happen. Because if you know how to close someone, answer their objections, and give them the next step, it's really possible to get people to convert without having to use this massive pressure of a deadline, right? And you can get people to buy now, right? If you want people to buy now, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. One of those is to have a conversation with them. When you actually are having a live conversation, whether that's on a phone or in a chat or in an email conversation, it is possible to get them to start it today, right? Or tomorrow. It doesn't have to be kicked off and anchored to this deadline that you're closing everything down. It's also a really simple, low tech process. You don't need an awful lot of technology. You don't need to be a tech savant guru to be able to do this. You just need to have two thumbs and be able to have a conversation. Okay. And what's awesome about this, what I love, is you can crack the code and then delegate the conversations, right? You'll be able to get in here and then figure out, well, what has to happen in this conversation for it to work? And then how do I get it off my plate so that someone else can do it? Someone you trust, right? Someone who understands you and your business. But the awesome part is it can be automated. And by automated, I just mean it's not you who's having to do it, right? A number of my clients tackle it this way, where they figure out what has to be said in this conversation to convert someone. Then you train someone up on being able to do that, and they're able to move forward. Okay. So, what are we talking about? So, I wanted to get us straight into the Convert with Convos framework, right? So, if you want to grab a copy of this, again, there's a link right below the page here, or if you go down the page, there should be a link. You can grab that. And what I'm going to fly through right now are the key principles that we use when getting you to convert with conversations, right? And then from there, what we'll be able to do is talk through the worksheets so you can see how this is going to work for you. So, key principle number one, think like a chess master. What does that mean? Well, I'll be upfront. I'm always am. I'm never hide this fact, but a lot of this framework is based off of Dean Jackson's conversational conversion method. It's been adapted to a few mediums and integrating kind of the lessons I've learned over using it over the last few years. And Dean's philosophy is you need to think like a chess master, right? Meaning you want to start the conversation here in a place where it's easy to open and it's non-threatening and it's how would you describe it? It's not intimidating to have the engage in the initial conversation, but you want to know where does this conversation need to go in order for you to convert that person, right? What does that mean? Well, if we look here at how this works, right? Generally speaking, we start over here. Someone comes through the front door of your business and they are at point A when you start the conversation with them. We ultimately want them over here at point B, which is them converted. Okay. Now, the big mistake that a lot of people make is they just go, hey, welcome to my business. Will you please buy my thing? We want to direct line it because that's what we want as the business owner is we want them to buy immediately. Okay. But unfortunately, that very rarely works, right? Because that's not how people buy. Number one, they need to understand, okay, is this even the thing that I'm looking for, right? One of my first mentors in sales was a guy called Rick Roberge. He's the guy responsible for building the sales team at HubSpot. One of the contributors to the structure and the philosophies over there. Obviously, HubSpot, a huge company now. But Rick once told me that sales is all about two things. Number one, it's about asking questions. And number two, it's about determination of fit. It's nothing more than that. And you ask questions to determine fit. And by determination of fit, we mean, hey, are we the right fit for one another? Are you and I a good fit to work together? Right? And what you want to be able to do is ask questions to move the conversation along, okay? And go from point A to a point where that person's converted, assuming that they are the right fit. Now, the thing about conversations is that they're not always direct lining and they're not always uniform, right? I could have one conversation with one person and we could start with one question. And based on what they've said to me and how I'm responding to them and how we're interacting, I could have a completely different conversation than having that same conversation with person B where I start with the same question, right? That's how conversations go, right? You are interacting, acknowledging what the other person has said, responding to them and moving off in the direction that the conversation tends to go, right? Different threads emerge based on what they say. You're going to say something different, right? It's why conversations are endlessly fascinating, at least for those extroverted people, because there's no uniform structure or uniform path that they can take, but there can be a fairly standard structure that you give to the conversations to be able to move them from point A to point B, right? So even though the conversation can feel like it's going like this, we want to be able to steer it ultimately to the destination. And the way you do that is by understanding that there are different phases to the conversation, right? There is phase one, which is all about engaging the person in a conversation. How do we get the person to respond and to actually get into the conversation to us where, hey, we're having a back and forth two-way communication here? That is phase one. Phase two is where you are qualifying the person, right? Again, you use questions to move the conversation forward in the engagement phase, and then you use questions again in the qualification phase to see, well, is this person the right fit for me? And by the questions I'm asking, are they able to tell whether I'm the right fit for them? Because you need to determine fit, and that doesn't always mean that it's just you think they're a fit because they've got money and can fog a mirror, right? You think they're a fit because they have certain criteria in place that are the building blocks for helping them get a successful outcome. And they see you as a fit because, hey, you're not just trying to take their money and you've got something proven, you're experienced, you understand their situation and the context that they're in, and you are telling them that you have a solution. Plus, you've got some results and some proof that you can actually do the same thing. That's what a really good sales conversation looks like. And that dance starts in the qualification phase, right? And then the third phase is once you have got that person qualified, you want to propose an offer, you want to make an offer to them, and then it's all about convert, right? How do we engage them so that we have the right to qualify them? And if they're qualified, then how do we convert them, right? And the way you do this is by having questions that you know are going to move the conversation along at the various phases of the conversation, all right? So the magic of how this works, the system is you need to understand and discover what are the questions that are going to accomplish things in these conversations for you in your business. So when we say think like a chess master, this is what we mean. We need to understand that this conversation has to go through two or three phases, and we know which questions we need to ask to move them forward, right? But how do we stay engaged in the conversation and make it feel organic while knowing that we're going to be moving this conversation forward 2-3 steps ahead down the line. So that's key principle number 1, right? Key principle number 2, start conversations everywhere, right? For a lot of people, especially if you're in a situation where you're not getting a huge quantity of conversations, we wanted to look and see, but where can you start conversations? Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of places you can start conversations. If we're just looking here at some of the examples, putting it up here in the workbook, right? Someone downloads a lead magnet, that's an opportunity to start a conversation. Here's the conversation starter I use when someone opts in on my lead magnet, right? Melissa, I see you downloaded my book. Welcome. What kind of program do you offer? Okay. If someone is on my email list, right? Hey, I've got a case study framework. Hey, I just uploaded a PDF with a simple framework. Would you like me to send you a copy? Right? With a PDF framework about how I used to get tons of case studies. Or if you're watching this now, if you are looking to understand how to get conversations converting for you, you can download the framework below this video. And what am I going to do? I'm going to reach out and see, hey, can we have a conversation after that to see, hey, how might I be able to help? Is there a situation and some problem that you're looking to solve? And not necessarily just to sell you something, but to build a relationship, right? Show you the solutions that I've got, free and or paid. And if we're a good fit, maybe we want to do some work together with one another, right? There's always an opportunity to start more conversations in your business, right? Conversational invites onto your email list. Hey, I'm putting together a case study group where we're going to focus on transitioning from the launch model to becoming open every day. Would you like to join us? I would, right? Someone joins your group or community, right? Ask some questions and reach out to them based on the answers that they have given you. Someone follows you on Instagram. Hey, Aaron, thanks for the follow. Much appreciated. This person instantly responds. That's you. I think I sent a text to that phone number and it was the wrong digits. So I'm in a conversation just by saying, hey, thanks for the follow, right? These are all phenomenal places to start conversations, right? If you're not familiar with the super signature, I'm not going to unpack that today. It's an email copywriting tactic that you can put at the end of your email, essentially to get more conversations from it, okay? These are all great strategies and great locations for you to start conversations. So if you find yourself in a situation where you maybe feel like you're talking to an empty room and you haven't got a huge amount of conversations coming in, I would encourage you to look at all the locations where people are connecting with you, either through an email list or social media, and see how can you start conversations there. Because for most businesses, they have tons of conversations that they are ignoring and that they are intentionally sidelining rather than engaging with. And if you just start those conversations or even engage with the conversations, you will have more qualified leads than you will know what to do with. Okay. So that's key principle, is to start conversations everywhere. Always be opening, right? Next key principle, don't be Mr. Robot, right? If we go when we look at the conversational framework here that we're talking about, okay, there are 3 parts to it. Okay, phase number one, as I mentioned, engage. Second phase, qualify. Third phase, convert. There's actually 3 phases, 3 little sub chapters to each of these large acts to the conversation, right? And each of these areas, you're going to want a question to move people along, right? So when I'm connecting with someone, I might ask them, what kind of program do you offer? Right? If I want to move them through the this or that question, which is basically just a really simple question where we're just still warming up, right? I don't want to be getting into what's your biggest struggle and challenge or tell me what keeps you up at night, because those are hard questions to answer and it's a little intimidating if you're asking those questions early. You need to get to a position where we both feel comfortable and confident that we're actually in a conversation with another human being who's paying attention and listening, and it's not going to be a waste of time to be typing out this massive response. You kind of need to start the conversation with an equivalent of, what kind of work do you do? The kind of question you ask at a conference, right? And then once they respond back, you're going to acknowledge what they said and say, I'm listening to you, I can hear you. And then you're going to ask up another softball question, which is a this or that question, right? Where you're basically going to say, so this or that. And right, in my situation, if someone comes in and they say, oh yeah, I offer a membership site about, teaching football coaches, right? my next question would be, oh, amazing. So are you setting with the launch model, or are you using an evergreen fund? Right? This or that, right? If I was working with coaches, I might say, cool, awesome. So do you work with clients one-on-one, or do you have a group program or a membership site? Right? Just offering one or two options, and they may not even be answering one or the other, but that's totally fine. You are just moving the conversation along by giving a this or that, right? You're going to have a question here, and then equivalent, right? Your script, your sales script is basically about figuring out what are the questions that I need to ask at these areas, and what is the information I need to communicate to them prior to making that question or making that ask. That is really what your script is going to be. And once people kind of get into the model of understanding this, the big mistake they start to make is they become Mr. Robot, right? Which is just question, question, question. And as you are being interrogated by the AI conversational bot, right? Like that's not an engagement that or anyone else really wants to be a part of, right? If you haven't seen the TV series Mr. Robot, it's fantastic. It's about this dude here. His name is Elliot, and he's a savant, technical, coding, hacking genius, but he has zero social skills. He is basically a machine. He is one with the machine. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't have what you could say is the social warmth and how would you say, back and forth banter. Banter's a bad word, right? But the back and forth engagement that people usually have when they're having a human conversation. And if you want to learn how to do that, there's a really simple framework that you need to apply, which is just you need to acknowledge what the person said. You need to expand on that ever so slightly. And then you can ask your next question, right? This is what humans do when they talk to one another. Oh, I said something, and let's say I was talking about Liverpool Football Club. As you can see, I've got a scarf here, as I am a fan, right? Oh, so you're a fan of Liverpool. I love Liverpool. I was actually at their match last week, right? Um, and then I could ask the next question to move the conversation forward. Is like, so have you been a Liverpool fan for a long time, or is this a more recent passion of yours that you've formed, right? This is how you kind of have a conversation is you take what the other person in the party has said, acknowledge that you heard it, mention it, expand on that, and then ask another question to move the conversation forward. This is how you do it. But if you don't do the acknowledge and expand portion, right, if all you do is ask question, ask question, ask question, it feels like a one-way conversation where you're just sucking information out of them. And that's not what they want. What people want is they want to feel like they're actually interacting with another human. Now, your main goal with this is, as I said, to map out your conversational flow. This is what you are going to be using, right, to be able to move people through the process, right? But we also need to understand that every time you're having a conversation, the conversation is taking place in a medium. Okay. So if you're having that conversation in Instagram, it's going to look and feel and sound like different to if you're having it in text, right? Or if you're having a conversation in person, it's going to be different to having it in email, right? The structure of the conversation needs to be the same, but the rules and the rhythm and the expectations of how that conversation is going to go is going to be different per medium, right? So you still need to engage, qualify, and convert the person, right? But for example, with email, you're just not going to be able to do that very quickly. You're not going to be able to do it because in the sense of you're not going to be able to have the back and forth kind of ping pong style of communication that you can tend to have in DMs or on Insta or in text, right? Because often in those situations, the other person's on their phone at the same time and you send a message and then they send a message and then you send a message and you're having that chat almost in real time, right? So you need to be able to figure out how do I engage, qualify, and convert people, but then how do I modify this and adapt it to the medium, okay? And the last key principle here is everything that I'm talking about, as Captain Barbosa from Pirates of the Caribbean would say, more guidelines than rules, like the pirate code. What does that mean? Well, for example, like I mentioned before, human to human interaction is organic, messy, and beautiful, right? Meaning it's very rare that any two interactions are the same. And if you try to make them all the same, you're going to come across as stiff. You're going to come across as someone who's not got a high social intelligence. And what you want to be able to do is roll with the punches and interact and improvise off what the other person is giving you and understand where am I in the conversation and what has to happen next, rather than necessarily just following the 9-part framework or the 9 steps through the 3-part framework, right? So, for example, if you're talking to someone and you've engaged them and you talk about the gap ID, but they also, when you talk about in the qualification phase, we'll talk about this in a second here, if they kind of tell you prior what they need help with, asking about that again, just for the sake of asking about it, is going to be like, were you not listening to me? I just already told you that a minute ago, right? So it's not about going through each of these steps in an exact order. It's about understanding that all these boxes need to be ticked in order for someone to convert, right? But they don't need to be done again like a human robot. You need to be interacting with the person, cueing and taking the feedback from what they're saying and moving through the phases rather than necessarily ticking all the boxes that I need to do these things in that order. Okay. So, with that in mind, those are the key principles. And what I'd love to do now is just quickly talk through how the conversational structure needs to go, what each of these phases is trying to accomplish, and we'll wrap up if you've got any questions. Again, if you're looking for a copy of this worksheet, go below the video. There is a link. There should be a button. You can grab your copy there. And again, this is the tool that I use with my private clients to be able to walk them through it. Okay, so let's talk through as well, just before we go into it. If you come in here, these are all some sample scripts. But down here as well, there are some examples of, how to have a conversation without coming across like a robot. There's some sample scripts in here. How to adapt it to the medium. And then there's some actually textbook examples. You can come in here and see how these conversations go. And there's a textbook example, which is literally a conversation that went through the exact phases in the right order. And then there's a guidelines example, which is a bit more of a messier conversation that was more organic, where I was really communicating with the person and they were giving answers at different phases, but I was taking the principle of how to follow the guidelines rather than the rules to close that conversation. And both of these are classic examples that I use when teaching of conversations that converted into high-end programs that were multiple thousands of dollars. All right. So all this stuff is in the workbook. But for now, let's go back here to the actual framework. Okay. And let's talk through the 9 phases. So number 1, if we're talking through the top part here, the first thing you need to do is engage the person in conversation. And you're going to do that by greeting them. And the best way to greet someone, I have found, the lesson I learned from Dean Jackson, is just to use their first name with an exclamation point. Ross! It's almost like a doorbell, right? There's a great energy. It's not you screaming with multiple exclamation points. We're talking about one exclamation point, where it's just like, Ross, Brian, Mary, right? There's a great energy to it. And the person knows you're calling out to them, trying to get their attention to draw them into a conversation. Now, not everyone is going to interact with you, and that's fine, right? Your goal is to find the 5-star prospects. 5-star prospect number 1, someone who's willing to engage in a dialogue. Star number 2, someone who's friendly and cooperative, meaning if you ask questions, they go along with you. Star number 3, they know what they want. Star number 4, they know when they want it. And star number 5, they want our help in getting there. That is the framework we use with all of these questions, right? And all your questions are basically trying to discover, is this person a 5-star prospect or not? And the only way that we can find out someone is a 5-star prospect is by first finding out, are they a 1-star prospect? Are they even willing to engage in a dialogue with us? And we're going to do it by greeting them, right? And we're going to acknowledge the action that they just said. So, Ross, thanks for the follow on Instagram. Or, Ross, I saw that you downloaded my book. Amazing. Clearly, I'm not writing very well today. And then we're going to ask a connection question. And the first connection question is going to be, for me, what kind of program do you offer? Right? Another great connection question, what kind of clients do you work with? What kind of services do you offer? What kind of music do you make? What kind is a great starting route to a question that is a really solid starting connection question, right? It's very non-threatening, and all you're doing is asking, hey, where in the world do you kind of sit so I can kind of know how to talk to you, right? It's a really solid, well proven conversational opening strategy that is so kind of it's people almost make fun of it now when you go to conferences like the oh, so what business are you in, or what kind of work do you do, right? Like you know the question is coming, but you know what it means, which is I'm making an effort to talk to you. Do you want to talk back to me or not? Right? That's what we're trying to do. But you get valuable information from this question because how someone answers this question in my world tells me a lot about whether they're qualified or not. If someone doesn't have a program, or if they tell me they don't have a program, not a good fit for me and my business, right? If someone says, what do you mean by program? That tells me that they have no idea what a coaching or an education program is. So probably not a good fit for me. Okay. But once you get that first question out, then you just want to move the conversation along to check, is this person a 2-star prospect? Are they friendly and cooperative? Meaning, once we're now in a dialogue, if I ask questions and start to lead this conversation, are they willing to go along with it or not? So you're going to ask a this or that question, which is basically going to be asking, hey, is this situation your scenario or is that situation your scenario, right? Talked a little bit about that already. You just need to be able to ask what that is for your situation. Then you're going to get into figuring out, do they know what they want? And what someone wants can be broken down into 2 parts, right? Number 1, their gap. And number 2, their needs. The gap is, hey, you're starting over here and you want to get to here. Can you articulate where you're starting and where you're trying to get to as it relates to the world or the endeavor that you're trying to make an accomplishment in, right? So in business, that might be cool. So what level of monthly revenue are you at? And what would you like that to be? For me, I might ask, so how many students are you getting in a month and how many would you like to be getting, right? For a specific client that I might have that is working in email copywriting, we might ask, cool, so how much are you charging per email right now and how much would you like to be charging, right? You're basically asking where are you at with this thing and where would you like to be, okay? What's your big dream goal with starting a freelance business, right? That might be a great gap question as well if the person's kind of starting at the front and they haven't got a measurement of success in place at the moment. But once you understand what the gap is, meaning that where are they starting and where are they trying to get to, now you have a basis for a conversation about how you can help them do it. So then you're going to ask needs analysis. What do they think they need help with? Right? There's a big difference between pitching people and selling people. And you're trying to sell someone, you are not trying to pitch them. So what that means is you need to find out what they think they need help with, and then you're going to show them how you are the person to be able to help them with that thing. So you're going to ask them, awesome. So what do you need help with? What do you need most right now? Right? Or, awesome. That's a great goal where you're referencing what they mentioned here in point B. What are the top 3 things you need help with? To make that happen. What has happened? If they answer this question, we now have a basis for like, I know what you need help with, and either I understand that I can help you with that or I can't. If I feel like I can, I'm going to tell you, oh, you need help generating leads, you need help converting them, and you need help sharpening up your offer. That's exactly what we talk about inside of the Open Everyday program. Your situation reminds me exactly of Brian's situation, who came in a very similar situation. Here's the result he got from going through the program, right? I'm very quickly able to acknowledge what they've said, relate to the scenario that they're in, validate that they're in the same area, right? And now they're in a actual, they can tell they're in a serious conversation and that I'm someone who can help them. And then we can move on to the next question, which is going to be finding out, is this person a 5-star prospect or not, right? So star number 4, because again, this was star number 1, this is star number 2. These 2 questions are star number 3. Star number 4 is going to be, do they know when they want it? And you're just going to ask, is this later or sooner? And star number 5, do they want our help getting there? Would you like some help? And very quickly, you've determined whether or not this person's a 5-star prospect or not, right? If they are, that's when you need to move on to the conversion phase, right? Now, the conversion phase has a number of elements to it. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this specific part because it's going to be very specific to what your offer is. Are you trying to get someone onto a phone call so you can sell them over the phone? Or are you trying to sell them into an offer like a course or some sort of group coaching program that might only be, $1,000 or $2,000, right? It depends on where it's going. But what you're going to do is you need to know, what is my closing mechanism and how am I going to convert them? Am I converting them by sending them the offer, the details right here in the email or in a PDF, or am I trying to move them to a phone call? But what you tell them is like, amazing. So I know and understand where you're at. I feel like you're a good fit and you've told me you want help with getting there. Here is what I would propose. Here's what I'm thinking, is a great line. And then you're just going to propose the next steps. Let's get on a call. Or here's what I'm thinking. We should work together inside of my open everyday case study group. This is exactly where I help people like you solve that problem. Let me get you the details. Okay. And then you send them the details and you ask them to tell them you whether they're in or not. If they're in, amazing. That's when you move to closing, where this is essentially going to be about giving them the link to purchase, making sure that they purchase on the spot, right? By incentivizing them to take action immediately. The big issue that I see with a lot of people is oftentimes they get to the point where the person's about to book a phone call or about to join the program and they send them the link and say, awesome, so here you go ahead and join whenever you're ready. Big mistake, right? Because what's that person going to do? They're going to procrastinate. They're going to say, oh, well, I'll get back to this later. You want to tuck that person in and you want them to take the action now. And you want to be able to do that by incentivizing them to take action while you're in the conversation with them. Okay, don't let people off the hook. That doesn't mean pressure people into doing things that they shouldn't be doing. It means when you know the person is a good fit and when you know you can help them and when you know that they have told you that they want your help in getting there, make sure that you follow through on the service of ensuring they take action. Because if you can actually help them, their life isn't going to get better until they commit, and you need to make sure that you get that sale closed. And then once you do and you've got it confirmed, then you're going to exit and you're going to excuse yourself from the chat. Brian, awesome. Delighted you're joining us, or delighted that we booked in for that call. I'm really excited. We're going to be getting into a lot of awesome stuff. I got to go right now. I got to cook dinner for my girlfriend, or I got to go right now. I've got another call, another appointment, or I've got to go. I got to get to jiu-jitsu training. You're just going to make a very socially acceptable reason to bring the conversation and the chat and the interaction to a close, so you're not leaving some giant open loop, and so that they aren't expecting that they're going to continue talking to you for another 20 minutes, right? You've closed it. You've got to move on to the next location. You're going to be talking to this person anyway real soon if they're a client or if they're coming into one of your programs. It's not like you're abandoning them, but you do want to be able to close that conversation down, end the interaction, welcome them and congratulate them on taking action, and then politely excuse yourself from the exchange. All right. And that is pretty much how it's done, right? If you look at this workbook, there's going to be a bunch of places that you can come through here to map out the actual scripts that you're going to use in your areas for the questions that you can use in each of these. If you're looking for help with that as well, you can download the book below this video, and you can schedule in some time if you're looking for some help with me to be able to craft out what these scripts will look like for you. But with that, hopefully this was useful. If you've got any questions, drop them below. Would love to answer them. Someone did fire in a question earlier on, which is, how do you use conversational sending for lead generation? How do you use conversations to generate leads? Well, very simply, the answer is there are, in fact, two different types of leads that you need to consider, right? There's brand new opt-in leads, right? Because the term leads is used very ubiquitously by different people for different meanings. For some people, a lead is someone that just opted into your email list after downloading a book. For other people, a lead is someone that is willing to get on a phone call with you, and that person actually is a lead on someone who's going to become a prospect or a client. Okay, and you want to be able to use conversations in both of those scenarios, right? Number one, after someone opts into your world by downloading your lead magnet, how do you start a conversation with those folks? Okay. And you do that by starting a conversation just like this, like I talked about a minute ago. Okay. So someone downloads the lead magnet. You want to get into conversation with that person to see, are they a 5-star prospect or not, right? Don't assume that just because someone joins your world right now, they're not going to be ready to buy right now. Okay. This is a great way to generate leads and conversations with leads for people that just joined your world. Okay. The second area that you want to be able to generate leads is how do you actually get the qualified leads, the people who are actually looking for help and are actively in the market right now. And the way you do that is by advertising to your existing audience items that would indicate they're looking for help, right? For example, if someone just downloaded the workbook right now for how to convert with Convos, I can probably tell a lot about that person that this is an issue that they're thinking about solving at some stage in the near future, or it's a problem at least that they're thinking about solving at some stage. And if I can get into conversation with that person, I can identify, are they a 5-star prospect or not, right? But if you want to be able to find the leads in your existing audience, start playing around with conversational invites, asking them if they want a thing to help them do a job, right? Hey, I just shot a video with the 3 steps to move away from the launch model, make your business open every day by adding 10 to 15K a month. Would you like me to send you the link? Let me tell you, if someone wants a video on how to add 10 to 15K a month so they can move away from the launch model, they don't really want the video. What they want is the outcome that the video is promising. And if that person is raising their hand saying, I want that outcome, there's a pretty good chance that they actually want the outcome. And if you can get into conversation with them, you might be able to help them get there. All right. So that was a great question that was asked. Just wanted to make sure I added that in for you as well. Doesn't look like we have any other questions, which is fine. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reply to the emails that you got delivering this. Otherwise, if you are looking to grab a copy of this workbook, go below the video. You can see it right there. There should be a link to get it. Otherwise, this has been a blast. Hope you got a lot out of it. And yeah, this is Ross Loughlin out, and we'll talk to you soon.